Nicole Wohlrab. I'm the Media Center Specialist at Ramsey High School. I started in the Ramsey School District in January of 2019 as the Media Center Specialist at Eric Smith Middle School. Prior to that, I've served in both urban and suburban school districts in New Jersey as an elementary teacher, a certified reading specialist, and as the Media Specialist for grades K to 8. This summer, I had the opportunity to work on curriculum development for our Profile Project courses, and I also led professional development sessions for teachers as well as an enrichment course for students. Tonight we will focus on 3 key questions. First, how do we define media literacy? Next, what are the roles of the media specialist? And last, how will the Media Center shift to meet the needs of the 21st century learner? Let's start with a definition of media literacy.
So what exactly is media literacy? We're going to talk more about this in our first episode next week, but here in the preview, I'll at least tease that definition. For our purposes in this course, media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. We'll break down what that means throughout this series, but for now, I just want to drive home the fact that media is all around you. And living in a saturated media environment, it's important to understand how to digest all of that content. Like, how do I know if a piece of media is trying to manipulate me? Spoiler alert, it probably is. Or how can I be sure that a piece of news is fact-based? Don't worry, we've got some tips and tricks for you. We're going to explore the breadth of media that surrounds you in your daily life. We're going to look at why it's created and what its goal.
As Jay mentioned, media literacy refers to how we access resources, analyze content, synthesize information, communicate findings and perspectives, and even create artifacts. Media literacy is continuously growing and evolving. Let's take a look at a strategy that helps students learn to combat confirmation bias. Technology changes our relationship with media and the nature of how we consume it. Feeds are tailored based on a person's pauses or clicks, which leads to the singularization of content to a person's pre-held view. Confirmation bias is the practice of searching for evidence or data that agrees with or confirms what you already believe to be true, instead of searching for evidence of the contrary. Marco Areola has a strategy to combat confirmation bias he calls brain hacking. He says, brains need to be hacked in order to notice this bias and create an algorithm for avoiding it. The strategy is to use simple lines of code to improve reasoning. For example, if you have an opinion on a subject, assume that said opinion is wrong. When looking for evidence, look for evidence that make holes in the original point of view. Always be willing to change your mind in the face of more evidence. A great example of a lesson that illustrates this point is to ask students to think of their favorite athlete and then think about another athlete who other people believe to be just as good or even better. Their task is to think about the different metrics by which we would assess that player and compare those 2 players' metrics. This is fun because students can see that although LeBron James is their favorite player, Michael Jordan has him beat in terms of championship wins, points per game, and rebounds per game. After comparing the 2 players, usually using a T-chart, we can talk about how LeBron can still be your favorite player subjectively, but you are now much more knowledgeable and can talk about the objective statistics and form a much more reasonable and informed response to the question of who is better between LeBron. So what is the role of the 21st century Media Center Specialist? Gone are the days of that stereotypical librarian shushing people and tracking down overdue books. Okay, you still have to return your books. But today's 21st century media specialist wears the hats of teacher, instructional coach, technology expert, and researcher. For example, the media specialist researches best practices in media literacy instruction. We curate quality resources, provide professional development to share new knowledge in the field, and help to revise and supplement curriculum. The media specialist also might co-teach or support classroom teachers in integrating digital literacy lessons into instruction. A perfect example of a lesson in media literacy comes from Mr. Dan Williver, award-winning social studies teacher at RHS. As part of his World and National Affairs course, which also happens to be a Profile Project course, students are tasked with conducting an audit of their media intake. Students record media habits over the course of a week and then develop a visual using the healthy eating pyramid. After an analysis of their own media consumption habits, students are to set a media intake goal and redesign the pyramid to reflect the new healthy media consumption habits. This type of task requires many of the competencies on the profile of a graduate. How are media centers shifting to meet the needs of the 21st century learner? A 21st century media center nurtures collaboration and hands-on learning. Hold on, this is 2020. Just scratch that and hang on to it for later. Traditionally, libraries were designed and built for obtaining books and lending them to students or teachers. The 21st Century Media Center moves from a center of consumption toward a center for production. As students become more avid consumers of media, we can expect them to create artifacts that demonstrate understandings. We have already begun working on a new platform to share RHS news called the Ramsey Broadcasting Network. In addition to the studio tools, we will incorporate podcasting studios, 3D printers, and utilize collaborative spaces for students to construct and produce, not simply consume information. We just have to wait for 2020 to end. Well, I hope you found this presentation on 21st century media literacy skills to be informative, if not downright exhilarating. I'll leave you with this quote by Elizabeth Toman, the founder of Center for Media Literacy. At the heart of media literacy is the principle of inquiry. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RamseyHS Media. I also highly recommend subscribing to the Crash Course channel on YouTube for some fast-paced and informative videos on topics such as navigating digital information and the Media Literacy Crash Course. Have a great night and go Rams!